Welcome to another series in our JA Speaker Series. And today we're talking about human resources. We're going to talk with Bob Walla, who is a retired human resources professional with many years in the industry and in that sector, and really has seen human resources grow. So Bob, thank you so much for joining us and giving us an opportunity to share your story with students. We'd love if first you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you and your work in the human resources field and where you started and where you ended up. We're looking forward to hearing more about your journey.
Well, thank you. And hi, everybody. As Angie mentioned, my name is Bob Walla. And yes, I have been in human resources. And a lot of you may be questioning, well, what is HR? And if I use that initial of HR, it is strictly the acronym for human resources. Although in the industry, as the industry developed, years and years ago, we used to call it personnel. Not personal as in a personal possession, but personnel. And why did it change? Well, personnel are people, and that's what human resources is all about also. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how things developed. But when we talk about human resources and why I'm doing what I do, Angie did say that, yes, I did happily, I can't say regretfully because you're always going to know when it's time to retire. But I did retire about a year ago, but I still have that HR passion within me. And I'm hoping that if you're watching this or as you watch this, you'll understand a little bit about what HR is about, why I did what I did career-wise to get into HR, and show you, or you'll hear a little bit about that transition. I think first and foremost, when I started college, the funny story, and this is going back a number of years ago, but back when I first took college, well, even in high school, surprisingly, I went to a technical high school back in Chicago, born and bred in the Chicago area. And technical, by definition, means, a lot of drafting, a lot of engineering, a lot of math that goes along with it. And I've always been good at math. So when I got out of high school and went to college, I went to DePaul University in Chicago, and I always wanted to be an accountant. I figured, that's where the money is. I'm going to make lots of money and I'm going to make a name for myself being in accounting. And in college, my first year, my first semester, I took one class in cost accounting. Not sure if they still call it that, but cost accounting. And yeah, I did okay in it, but then I started to realize, boy, accounting, that's all numbers. Where's the interaction with people? I've always wanted to be, and I always have been, a people kind of a person. And I talked to the professor after the class, and I said, is this what accounting is all about? Because if it is, I need something different. And he knew my passion for working with people or dealing with people, always had friends around me. And he said, well, what about this personnel thing? And I said, well, what's that? And he explained a little bit of what personnel is. It's a career with involving people. And I said, that's where I want to go. And I changed my direction after the first semester in college. And truly, the rest is history. In a 4-year time, I got my degree in what was called back years ago in commerce. My degree is in commerce, but commerce basically back then was called management, and I majored in personnel management. And right place, right time, I immediately got a job, well, not got a job, but was offered a position with the company that I had been working with back then. And which is also another funny story because my first job working through college was in a factory. everybody needs factory workers. And I was working in a factory building cabinets for a coin-operated amusement game called Midway Manufacturing. And you're going to say, Midway? Why? I've been to an arcade once or twice in my life. I think I remember some of those games. Yep, I used to build the cabinets like in the amusement parks that you see or in the arcade facilities. And doing that, believe it or not, the major product that Midway made, anybody ever hear of Pac-Man? Anybody ever hear of Space Invaders? That's what put us on the map. But I made cabinets during college days. Then I got promoted into a technical field there, and technical, heck, I used to play the games. I used to test the games out. My first game of testing was Pong, P-O-N-G, if anybody remembers that. It was two paddles and you used to hit a ball back and forth. That's what I did. I tested it. But then again, talking a little bit about career, and I don't want to ramble, but when I got my degree in personnel management, the president of the company came up to me and said, you know, Bob, we've never really had a true HR department. Right place at the right time. How'd you like to take it over? Take it over? I don't even know what I'm taking over. He said, you're starting from scratch. We didn't have an HR department. It's yours now. Go for it. Run with it. And
Bob, I have a question.
the
I
rest
just
is
want to
history.
cut in here. What do you think it was about you as an employee and you as someone that was working there that would create an opportunity for a supervisor to say, hey, I trust you and I'd like for you to take this and run with it? What were the traits that you were exhibiting on the job that provided an opportunity for a supervisor to recognize something in you? What can students do to stand out in these first jobs?
Well, what allowed me to stand out, or what made me stand out, as I said before, I always wanted to be around people. You could find me, very seldom would you ever find me just sitting in the corner having lunch or a cup of coffee or something like that. I needed, and still today, I need to be surrounded by people. And yet, that's what HR is all about, obviously. It's a people resource, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, or I'll mention it. But also working in a factory, you're surrounded by diversity, especially back in Chicago. I worked alongside with diverse individuals, and they would always joke with me, oh, I didn't know the language. And I'd say, teach it to me. Tell me some words and help me converse with you. And they did. They allowed me to learn a little bit of Spanish, because I worked a lot with the Spanish group. Some, very few, but some Chinese, not that I remember any Chinese language, but the mere fact that I was with that diverse group. And I think the managers saw that in me, that I never took offense, or I never shied away from being not only with people, but also wanting to help them. If somebody was in a jam or somebody couldn't work, extra hours, hey, let's go ask Bob, he can do it. And I did. So I think that, plus the fact that the managers there, and again, I had worked there for 3 years now during the summers and part-time while in school. They saw in me the desire to want to always help people. And that truly is what HR is about also, being there for the people.
That's so powerful. Yeah, that's powerful, and that's important. And that's something that a leader recognized in you and said, Bob really has the ability here to connect with this team and really help this team connect. And a big part of human resources, and just the idea of a resource being a human. You know, when you're looking at hiring, you're looking at staffing, you're looking at filling these positions, you need a resource. Sometimes you need a technological resource. Sometimes you need a financial resource. But then the other one, the other big component is that human resource, and understanding and knowing how to find talent, how to develop talent, how to nurture talent. But additionally, I can imagine, and I want to get into some of that later too, but here in this first role, when they said build this department from scratch, what is one of the first things that you had to wrap your head around and understand in creating a role like this for the company?
Well, and you hit the nail on the head, literally, when you talk about resources, because any organization, and I don't care where you're working or what you're doing, look back and look at the resources that are needed to make that organization or product a success. You need inventory, that's material resources. You need technological resources. Somebody had to develop it. You need the financial resources. You need money to build a product, to buy parts for the product. But the key resource, and I've always said this, are the people that make the product happen. And it could be a product, it could be a service, it could be anything, but you need the people. And that's the human side of human resources. Now, that said, when given that first opportunity to, hey, Bob, it's yours, make it happen. What was the first thing? I think people trusted me, number one, because now all of a sudden you're going to say, oh gosh, the guy who used to work alongside of me building a cabinet, he's now a manager, whatever that may mean, you know, to them. And a manager truly, and think about, I'm sure if you're in high school now, you probably have a part-time job, just like I did back then. And you're going to say to yourself, well, do I look up to my manager or do I frown upon him or her because he or she is the boss? Don't view it as a boss. View it as, I'd almost say one of the guys or one of the gals, but more so than that, they're going to come to you depending on you to give them the right answer. It may not be the answer they want, but it's going to be hopefully the right answer. So that was number one. And secondly, now that I became the manager, first and foremost, I've got to do things legally. You know, you got to do it the right way. And in college, one of the key classes that I took was labor law. And that's still prevalent today, you know, especially nowadays with the laws and procedures changing almost every day. You have to stay attuned to what, not only what's right and wrong, but what's legal and not legal. You know, so that helped me a little bit. But, and one thing that I can't stress enough is have fun. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, it becomes a job rather than, you know, an opportunity or a career. And still today, I have a sign in my office here at home, but I've always had a sign in my office at work. And it's something that I painted, believe it or not. But the key ingredient to that picture is it says, laugh daily. If you're, and I'm not saying you need to be the class clown or, you know, every village needs an idiot. Don't be the village idiot on your job, but have fun and laugh. If you're not enjoying it, like I said, it then becomes a job.
And I think that's beautiful. And then I think additionally, laughing, also having the ability to laugh sometimes at our own choices, our own decisions, being able to laugh at ourselves and say, okay, I learned from this one, I'll move on and do something differently next time. But being able to be nimble and flexible and work through those. But that, you know, you bring up a great point, and it's about adding joy to every day in your career, adding those moments of inspiration, because a lot of times we spend more time with our professional colleagues than we do with our families at home. I mean, it's definitely true during the weekday. So you want to ensure that you're finding those opportunities to bring those lighthearted moments in, because especially in human resources, you have to think about, how do I get somebody to come back to work tomorrow, right? How do I make sure there are lots of factories here in Chicago? How do I make sure they're coming back here? What were some of the laws? That was something I definitely wanted to talk to you about, because staying up to date in those human resources laws or federal guidelines and state guidelines are so important. But then number two, how did you build in something that was an environment? Because a big part of human resources is the environment. And we could even go to your next role if you want, and what you did after the factory. So you built in a human resources department here, and what you learned there, I'm sure helped to take you to the next position, right?
Exactly. And when we talk about the laws, especially within human resources, what you can do, what you can't do. Now all of a sudden I'm responsible for hiring all these people, just like I got hired, years earlier. But I think in an HR environment, and I'm sure all of you, or those of you who have worked, have probably gone through some sort of an interviewing process. And what, from the other side of the desk, what can you ask? What shouldn't you ask? What's the best way to respond to those questions? Again, you can't ask, oh, well, how old are you? Or what's going to prevent you? How many days have you been absent in the past? Because then how do I know that I can depend on you to keep working for me? So there's a lot of questions that could be asked, shouldn't be asked, and if asked and you feel uncomfortable with it, while on the other side of the desk trying to answer those questions, you have to be cautious about, oh yeah, well, I'm 18, I can do this, I can do that, or I'm 21, whatever the case might be. You never want to get into that. If you're a female, oh, what are you going to do with your childcare? Well, who said anything about babies? So there's certain precautions that you just have to be cautious about. So legal type questions is number one. But then once you do get the job, what can you do on the job? What's right, what's wrong? And also know, which is the fun part about HR. Well, I say fun, is the good part about HR. All of a sudden people are going to think, oh, you're HR, you work for the company, so I can't trust you. Nope. HR, I've always said, is the person you come to when you feel either something wrong has happened to you on the job, but you have to trust the HR person, because they're the middle ground between management and employees. And I've always thought that was important in my career too. People have to be able to come to me and trust me, trust that they're going to get a fair shake no matter what the issue is. And that's critical, in any career opportunity, knowing that there's ears that will hear your voice. And that's what I took pride in also, knowing that if anybody comes to me, they know that my door is always open, and they know that what's said is going to stay there, unless I have to escalate it. But they'll always get the fair shake when they come talk to Bob.
Yeah. So far, I've heard you talk about putting people first, which is true in any case, but in human resources especially, that's your resource, the people, the humans, putting people first, laughing daily, making sure you're building in those moments, building trust, and understanding how to build trust and a rapport with your colleagues. And then I love that you said, know that ears will hear your voice. So you're not, you're speaking to a human, you're speaking to a person, and each word that you say has an impact on the person around you. So I think that's really important. where did you go next, Bob, from Midway? What was the next step?
Well, and I know throughout everyone's career, this could happen. I always hope that it wouldn't, and that it doesn't, but it always could happen. Unfortunately, well, or fortunately, Midway was owned by a big corporation called Bally. And
Hmm.
Bally is known for uh, pinball games, and we've all kind of played those too over our years. But they also had casinos in Las Vegas and on the East Coast. And Bally consolidated three or four of their companies. And after 16 years, believe it or not, 16 years working with Midway, I got that tap on the shoulder and said, Bob, you did a great job, but we don't need you anymore. We have to lay you off. And I said, wait a minute. I always thought that when you start a job, that's where you're going to end your career. You know, 50 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever it may be. And nope, I got laid off. So I immediately went on a job search, found another company who wanted to hire me, got hired as a recruiter or staffer. That's the people who does the hiring or who will do the hiring. And that too, that company gave me the opportunity to still be in HR where my dreams were. But after 2 or 3 years with them, believe it or not, they're closing up that facility in Chicago. And they gave me the opportunity to say, hey, Bob, we like what you're doing. We're moving, though. We're moving to Michigan. Would you be interested? It's like, oh my goodness. Now I'm becoming the rebel of the family and picking up and moving family out of state. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. One, because it gave me the opportunity to see another side of the country, even though Michigan and Illinois are connected so closely. But it gave me and my family an opportunity to pick up and see what's on the other side. And believe it or not, after 2.5 years there, the exact same thing happened. We just got bought out by a company in England, and we're closing this entire facility. Oh my goodness, now what do I do? And got back on the job search. Believe it or not, that's what brought me to Colorado. I answered an ad in a small trade magazine. They were looking for an HR person at a company here in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. I applied, I interviewed, and within 3 weeks, I was offered the job to now move on the other side of the country. Oh my goodness, what do we do? Hey, we did it once, we did it twice, or this would be the second time, and we've been here for 30 years. Uh, Moved to a couple of different companies here, but and I think that's one important thing to answer your question. Never be afraid to either roll the dice or take chances. You know, sometimes it won't be the best move you've ever made or the best decision, but never regret those decisions. You know, there's always that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully it's not another train coming your way in that tunnel. But never be afraid to take a chance. I did it twice, and I've done it a couple times in my career, going from one company to another. But as I started answering this question, you hope you never get laid off. But believe it or not, in my, and I hate to admit, well, I love to admit it, my 45 years of being in HR out of college, I've been laid off or I've been part of reorganizing, restructuring, downsizing, right sizing, whatever you want to call it, 7 times in my career. And the key thing that I could offer from it, I've always landed on my feet and I've always moved on. And it's all, I always view that as a great learning opportunity, but sometimes it's the best thing that could happen because it forces you to look elsewhere. And that elsewhere is always, the sunny side of the street.
That's such an important lesson. So either sometimes you're the person who is the one who's having to make those hard decisions and having to say, okay, we need to downsize, right size, really restructure this organization. Sometimes you're the person who is on the other end of that decision and and is immediately faced with figuring out what to do next. Something that I think is important to talk to students about, sometimes you identify with your career title, right? And you might very much identify with the fact that I am this role at this organization, and there's a lot of pride in that. But then if a layoff happens, you have to very quickly readjust and figure out, okay, what is the next opportunity? What are some of the ways that you were able to really help yourself stand out in those job searches so that when it happened to you, you were able to say, okay, I'm going to apply for, and narrowing down these things and these opportunities and really figuring out how to put your whole self into it so that you stood out, so you made a difference, just like you did the first time you got the promotion at Midway.
Yep.
What do you think helps students stand out in a time when they're looking for a job or looking for a career change, whether it's something they are personally motivated to do or forced to do?
Good question. And I'll answer the question with first maybe a comment or some recommendations. When I got laid off, one of the, and again, I use that term loosely because they'd always call it something different, restructuring or consolidating, whatever. But somebody was telling me that they don't need me anymore. And that hurt. How could you say you don't need Bob? Everybody needs Bob. But I think one of the critical things to do is never take it as a negative. Always. And you guys and girls in high school, always work on your resume and always be prepared to have your resume ready to be handed out or sent elsewhere. So always stay current with your resume. And one of the things that I found, and one of the career changes, not a career out of HR, but as I said before, I've always been good with people, but very compassionate, very, I don't want to say sensitive. Well, yeah, I'm always sensitive to folks' feelings. And one of the things that during one of my career transitions after leaving a company, a good friend of mine, good colleague, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Bob, you know what you'd be good at? You're good at not laying people off. You never want to get good at that. But because of the compassionate side of me, they offered me an opportunity to work for a consulting company who did just that. Not lay people off, but when you did get tapped on the shoulder and they said you weren't needed anymore, they would come to the company I was working with and they would hire us, and I would go into that company and do workshops for those impacted and affected individuals. And I would teach them how to write a resume, how to interview, how to accept what happened and make it into a positive. You never want to say, I know exactly how you feel, because truly it happened to me, but I didn't know how they felt, but I could tell them how I felt. And again, that consulting role, I did that for like 3 or 4 years. And it was really an impactful opportunity that they gave to me, because now I could help others who were going through the same transitions and changes that I went through, and that I still sometimes would go through, later in my career. But That was very, very helpful. And no, sure, I don't want to say laugh daily, but they knew that if they're in one of my workshops, I'm going to look for the brighter side of what just happened to them and help them through that transition. And then we talk about how can I help them find another job? And
And I
believe it
think
or not,
it's so important, and it's so valuable for the organizations that you worked with to understand that hiring someone like you in a company like yours would help those humans, those humans that were resources, be great resources for other organizations as well, and really help them on their journey. So to me, it's really powerful that the organizations had hired your team, and very thoughtful to make sure that that was an opportunity for the folks who had been laid off. So important. So you were in Colorado Springs. You moved here for, you've had several roles in Colorado Springs. Tell us about where you ended up and where you saw your retirement.
well, it was that proverbial being at the right place at the right time. And I can honestly say, knowing the right people. Now, I say that not because the right people will hire you all the time, but one of my sayings is that if you network properly, and network just means staying active, staying social, and staying in touch with people who perhaps might be in the industry you want to get into or the industry you're in. But when I mentioned about working for this company that came in to help people who were losing their job, I'm sure some of you may know that Intel Corporation, the computer software company, had a huge facility here in town. And I was hired to help them as they were going through their downsizing. They were laying off quite a few people here back, oh gosh, probably older than some of you who might be watching this, but back in the early 2000 range, 2000, 2001, 2002 timeframe. And they were going through layoffs. So I was hired and I helped them during those layoffs. One of the folks that I made contact with, and I still stay in touch with him, um, knew my background, knew my passion for helping people, and he offered me a job with Intel. And I jumped at the opportunity thinking, oh, what a great company. I'm finally with a company that's huge, that's successful, that's multi-layered in different organizations in different parts of the country. And what a choice. A year and a half later, believe it or not, I got that tap on the shoulder and they told me, we're shutting the facility down. It's like, how could you do that? No, you can't shut down. This is Intel. And they offered me an opportunity to move to either Oregon, Arizona, or Santa Clara, California. And I said, thanks, but really no thanks. I like what I'm doing here in Colorado, and I'll keep looking. But then they said, but Bob, we remember what your background was in helping people going through transition. How'd you like to stay on and help close the facility? And by closing it, not manually locking the door, but working with the people who were being laid off, not only here in Colorado, but really in other parts of the country. And I jumped at the opportunity. It kept me employed for about, a little over a year. And then that opportunity that I always dreamed of came about. And I was offered a job in HR at Ent Credit Union. Hopefully, a lot of you have heard about Ent. They're still the largest financial institution up and down the Front Range in Colorado. And once again, one of the things that I've always said, it's who you know that will open the door for you, And it's what you know that will determine what side of the door you're on after the interview. And that was impactful because, yes, I knew the person who was uh, at that time retiring, and she called me and said, "Hey, Bob, I'm at that stage in my career. I'm going to retire. Why don't you apply?" I jumped at that opportunity. One thing led to another, and I was hired right as I was transitioning out of Intel, and I stayed with them for 10 years until I made that decision of retiring. So, but again, keep that in mind. It goes back to what I said about networking and knowing people. It's who you know that could open a door, but it's what you know that's going to decide what side of the door you're on.
So important because we talk a lot about the right network and relationship building. But again, if you're not prepared, if you're asking for a conversation with someone but not prepared for that conversation, you never get another chance for that first impression. You never
Exactly.
get another chance to show what you know because we, as humans, we make those instant judgments, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to come out of something like that. Something that I am inspired by your story is that there were a lot of decisions made that have affected and impacted your family, your career, your life, and it was almost like wrong. You'd be in the right place at the right time, and then it ended up being the wrong place. With Intel, who would have thought at the time that a company like Intel would actually close its doors? But it was in a rapidly changing technological environment, just like we have today. And as soon as a competitor comes along, you really lose that advantage at an organization, and it can happen pretty quickly. Similar to the blockbuster model, right? You're in the biggest operation in the world doing what you do, but then something comes along, innovates, and reinvents it, and you're shut down. If you don't innovate, you get shut down. But how were you able to maintain that positive attitude, positive energy every time going to a new interview? How did you keep that confidence about you to go to the next interview and say, this is what I learned from this organization and this is what I can bring to you here? What advice can you offer students who might see the road turn on them a little bit without their, they're on a journey, their car's filled with gas, they've got the right car, but then the road ends, right? Or there's a roadblock, right? How would you encourage and inspire students to remain motivated?
Well, and again, I think first and foremost, as I said before, about keeping your resume updated and current, if at all possible, and always adapt and change your resume around so that it applies for the company or the opportunity that you're applying for. And now stay technologically savvy. And I'm not saying you have to become a computer geek or anything like that, but back in the old days, you used to have to fill out an application and mail a resume in. Now everything is online, or just about everything is online. So stay current that way. And equally important is never get discouraged by the things that do happen. As you said, Angie, you may have a full tank of gas. Every time, I got that tap on the shoulder, I just viewed and truly, I viewed it as a speed bump in the road to life, in my road of life. And yeah, you are going to get those peaks and valleys sometimes, or those speed bumps that you have to try and go over, but go over it slowly and know that the road will continue on the other side of that bump. And just be prepared for it. Don't get discouraged, but take it as just as a change, and hopefully make it into a positive change. The 7 times that happened to me, every time I made that change turned into something more positive, and more productive and more inspiring, if you will, of what could happen. So never lose faith. Always know that there's somebody that's going to be there to help you, and that help could be family, or should be family. They've always been supportive of me with every change that I've made, and equally important, have mentors. Don't be afraid to reach out. I've had two really key mentors throughout my career. One of which was the vice president when I moved to Michigan after the the job that closed up in Illinois, and one of his philosophies was not only have fun, but um, he'd always say to me, work hard and party hard. Now that's not party hard, but that means have fun in doing what you're doing. Uh, Work hard, obviously to continue being successful and learning of what you're doing, but don't take your work home with you every day. Know that the work will still be there tomorrow, and go home to family and have fun with family. So work hard, play hard. That,
Work hard,
and
play
that's
hard.
critical.
And Bob, I think you come from a really unique perspective when you hit that retirement mark and you're able to look back and say, if I could have done something differently, I might have done this differently, or adding more confidence in and to the decisions that you made. Were there any turns, any opportunities, any things that you look back on that you've learned from and thought, I would probably do this differently if I went back, if I was starting my career over again rather than looking at it from this side?
Well, looking back, do I regret not being that accountant that I always wanted to be? Absolutely not. I still love numbers. I still, uh, very seldom, believe it or not, folks, very seldom do I use a calculator. If somebody says, hey, Bob, what's 20 times 87? And I'll come up with the answer. I stay current with the math side of me, so that's still in me. But I still love people, and I think that was critical. So, what could I have done differently? Well, besides being that, always having the dream to be an accountant, believe it or not, my childhood dream, and I still think about it, I can't say every day, especially because of baseball. I always wanted to be the center fielder for the Chicago Cubs. Yeah, I love baseball. I loved playing it growing up. And that was my dream because I grew up not far from Wrigley Field in Chicago. And I remember, on the warm summer days, taking the bus to go see a baseball game, with my friends. And if I had to do it all over again, no, I'm probably too old to be playing baseball, but that was my dream. No regrets because I still have the passion for watching baseball. But I think if I had to do anything over again, I'd still want to be with people, no matter what the job is. If it wasn't in human resources, heck, maybe I'd be, I don't want to say a Walmart greeter, but I'd be working in a carnival somewhere, watching the Ferris wheel go around and helping people onto the Ferris wheel or the roller coaster. It's got to be with people. And that's where my passion is.
So important, and I think that really showed in your career, and how you manage those relationships and encouraged mentors and networking and really helped to build those human resources in every organization that you worked for. Bob, are there in closing, if you will, ideas, insights, perspective that you want to make sure students keep top of mind as they approach either their first job that they're about to take, or if they're graduating, that they start looking at picking a major? From someone who has been in charge of the hiring and the team building and interviewing for so long in your career, what advice and what tips would you share with students as we close to say, keep these things in mind in your professional journey?
And I think that's critical, you know, having not only keeping those things in mind, but follow the dream. You know, granted, there's going to be some nightmares along the way, but don't ever be afraid to reach out and keep searching and keep following that dream. Uh, there may be changes in a career, you know, and we're talking about human resources. Know that there are so many different opportunities within HR. As Angie mentioned about hiring or benefits or compensation or training or employee relations. I mean, there are so many different pieces to that puzzle of what HR is all about. You know, so don't be afraid to get into an HR field, and I won't say segregate yourself into any one chosen part of what HR can be, but there are a lot of different parts to that moving puzzle. So research it. Don't be afraid to talk to counselors, whether it be in high school or college, to learn what other opportunities are out there. And yeah, although I've been very fortunate to be in that same career field my entire life, even though I've had a lot of those speed bumps jump up at me, I've always been fortunate to keep landing on my feet. It's a fortunate opportunity, but don't be afraid to change fields. Um, you know, if you have a dream that you want to be in X, there may be a Y and a Z that follows it, but research it, try it out, and if it doesn't fit, like any good pair of shoes, the shoes may not fit all the time, you know, but know that there's still a shoe store out there that you could buy another pair somewhere along the line. And you know, it's a kind of a crazy analogy, but it is something that you need to keep first and foremost. Never get discouraged. Never be afraid of the nightmares that may come up, because you still have the dream, you still have the passion, and you know the road still will continue on.
Follow the dream.
Exactly.
Follow the dream. And I love how you talk about the nightmares, if you will, because it seemed like every time in your career, especially if we just look at yours, when there was a nightmare, around the corner was a door that opened that ended up being a better opportunity.
Yep.
So what felt at the moment like something that it was going to be hard to recover from, when you kept going and got to the other side and kept following your dream, on the other side was a better opportunity. And you were able to make that happen several times in your career. And we certainly hope that everyone listening and watching right now can too. Bob, we appreciate your time, appreciate you sharing your perspective and your insight with students. You're remarkably inspiring. I think follow the dream is certainly something that students can write down in their notebooks, put it on their mirrors. Follow the dream, even through the nightmares, and know that better things will come on the other side of that.
But besides that, what's the other thing to always remember?
Have your resume ready. That
And
one?
and
And put people first. You said so
and
many things, Bob. What else?
laugh daily.
Laugh daily. That's right.
You
That's
have
right.
to have fun in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, we appreciate your time, appreciate you sharing your perspective. And to students, Bob is, of course, available for you if you have any follow-up questions on a career in human resources and following that pathway for your career trajectory. We appreciate your time, Bob. And students, follow the dream. Keep dreaming. Thanks so much.
Exactly. I'm always right around there to help you if I can.
Thanks, Bob.
Enjoy. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Stay that a take?